Today, in a marathon meeting in Georgia, the new pro-Trump majority of the Georgia State Election Board, they passed a whole bunch of new rules, yet more new rules today, 46 days out from the election, including one that requires a hand count of ballots. I mean, reminder here that Georgia has 11 million people. I'll quote here from the Washington Post's coverage of this shock decision today in Georgia. Quote, democracy advocates accused the board of intentionally injecting chaos and uncertainty into the presidential contest. Election supervisors and poll workers said hand counts would take too long, cost money, and almost certainly produce counting errors. The Office of the Republican State Attorney General, which is responsible for advising the board, wrote in an opinion that the change was, quote, unlawful. Nevertheless, the board voted 3-2 to approve the measure. Quote, research and practice have shown again and again that hand counting ballots is less accurate than machine tallies, and that it can take days, weeks, or months, depending on the size of the jurisdiction. Again, 11 million people in Georgia. Quote, critics say because the hand counting requirement would almost certainly inject error into the tabulation process, it could give county boards the evidence they need, meaning the pretext they need, to delay certification. Some questioned whether it amounts to intentional sabotage of state elections. Yeah, it's one thing to say falsely that there's something wrong in the elections. It's another thing to actually monkey wrench the works so that Georgia really can't count its vote. Radical stuff going on in Georgia. Not just creating false propaganda about election problems that aren't there, but now moving on to actually creating real election problems for real. They're going to try to make Georgia take months to count. It's not just going to test our patience. It would break the system, because if it's going to take months, at that point, the deadlines for Georgia and every other state producing their electoral votes will have long passed. The good news here is that Georgians turned out in significant numbers today to say no to this. The opposition at this event was sustained and articulate and very, very present. And I can't help but believe that that matters.
The idea that you're not going to listen to the individuals that are charged with conducting elections is absurd to me. We all have given our lives. Most of us work decades in these career paths. And to say that we don't know what we're talking about, you wouldn't say that to any other professional. I've stayed at a lot of Waffle Houses in my life, but that does not qualify me to operate a Waffle House. Listen to the experts.
Listen to the experts. That was the local elections director from Douglas County, Georgia today, speaking before the state elections board in Georgia. Before that board voted on a whole bunch of new rules today that aim to pretty radically change the way elections are run in Georgia just a month and a half before Election Day. The board held a public comment period today before taking the vote. Dozens of people showed up to do what is essentially a civic duty in a circumstance like this, to tell the board face-to-face, to be on the record opposing these radical changes to essentially undo the state's election rules and processes right before the presidential race.
The recent actions of the board sow chaos and dramatically undermine trust in our constitutional republic and its democratic processes.
I'm glad to serve as a poll worker, even though it can be cumbersome, tiring, and stressful at times. All of these proposals are attempting to remedy problems that don't exist.
This timeline is not just tight, it is impossible. Imagine the uncertainty and the confusion and the added burden on election workers and county budgets. These rules do not protect our elections. They undermine them.
Your actions attempt to stack the deck for a particular outcome, and that is the definition of anti-democratic.
I think what is happening is we are setting up our counties to fail. And when these counties fail, when there are inaccuracies, if there is a result of the election that some of the members of this board do not like, they will be able to point to those inaccuracies, and they will say that that the election is inaccurate, that there is a lack of integrity in the election.
The last speaker there is a state representative in Georgia named Syra Draper. She's telling the Georgia Election Board there essentially, hey, I'm onto you, that she believes the motive behind what they're doing is not just to create an illusion that there's something wrong with Georgia's election results, but actually to set Georgia elections up to fail, to make the administration of this election so chaotic and so impossible that Georgia actually won't be able to produce a clear result. And then they can point at that and say, see, look at all these problems in our elections. We should throw out the vote. Or at least we should fight over this and have this tied up in court so long that maybe the state's votes for the Electoral College never make it in time, never make it to Washington in time for the Electoral College count. Joining us now, I'm happy to say, is Sarah Tindall Gazelle. She's the lone Democrat on the Georgia State Election Board. She voted against the rule change today that requires hand counting the ballots. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's been a very, very long day, and this has been a very stressful period.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Can I just ask you if you feel like, if I've been mischaracterizing anything that's happened at the election board, or if you feel like the public understanding broadly as the nation's eyes sort of turn to Georgia, if there's been any fundamental misunderstandings about what's happening there, if you feel like those of us observing this from afar pretty much understand what's going on?
Well, the one thing I want to make sure is clear is we're not hand tabulating the ballots. We're simply hand counting the number of ballots. But again, we're just weeks away from the election. So for counties to try to retrain their poll workers and their poll managers, for them to hire more workers, because workers who've been out there for 14, 16 hours a day and are not in any shape to count thousands of ballots accurately, it's just absolutely untenable. So I don't see any other explanation for this other than exactly as Representative Draper said, which is setting counties up for failure.
I think a lot of people who've been watching what have been happening in Georgia, particularly now that the Secretary of State has weighed in and advised that some of these proposed changes seem to be in contravention of Georgia law, now that the Attorney General's office have weighed in and said this is beyond, some of these changes are beyond the statutory authority of the board. I think a lot of people are looking at that and thinking, well, the board is doing all these things, but none of it'll stand, that this will all get blocked by the courts, that Georgia's elections won't be affected by the chaos that these rules, at least on paper, would seem to be injecting into the process. Do you share that confidence? Do you think the courts will essentially come to the rescue here and keep Georgia's normal election procedures in place?
Well, I certainly have hope that they will do that. Confidence, I'm not nearly as confident as some of the commentary that I've seen and read, because it's a really narrow window, both in terms of time and in terms of the legal theory, because there is it's hard to sue the state. There's sovereign immunity questions that come into play. The fact that my colleagues are willing to completely disregard advice of our counsel, we are represented by the Attorney General's office. We were told flat out that this was not a lawful use of our authority. That I found actually quite shocking.
I wondered when I saw that today, especially when the chairman of the board, who voted the same way that you did on most of these rule changes, when he explicitly noted at today's hearing, we are taking this action. If you vote in favor of this, this is in contravention of the legal advice we have been given about what we are legally allowed to do. I wondered if there might actually be potentially worries among the majority of the board that voted for those changes that they might have been contravening Georgia law simply by taking this vote and trying to take actions that they're not legally allowed to take. You would think, but I also would suspect that if they were actually concerned about it, they would have voted differently, because this counting the ballots is theater. Frankly, it doesn't add actual security. There are so many backups and ways of making sure that we know how many ballots were cast. It's confirmed 3 different ways. So it seems that they have some other motive. Sarah Tyndall Gazelle, the lone Democrat on the Georgia Election Board. As I said, I know that you're in a very difficult spot on this board. The eyes of the nation really are on Georgia. Thank you for taking time to talk to us again. I hope you wouldn't mind coming back and talking to us again as these things evolve. It's going to be a really, really important next 46 days to see how this all resolves in your critical state.
Well, I hope I'll have better news next time.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure.